Can we give our friend Phil Jones a big round of applause as he hits the stage?
Before I get into some of the frameworks about how you can get better at the critical conversations in your life, I got to answer a question that's been asked of me more times in the last 24 hours than it has been asked of me in my entire life. And that question is hey Phil, how do you learn the stuff that you've learned? How did you do the stuff that you do? What's your backstory to get you to this point in time? And I'm being tired of trying to tell the story one person at a time in the corridors, so I figured I'd use some of this time up here to share some of that story with you folks and let you into some of the lessons that have created some of the lessons to get towards this point. Would that be useful? Okay. Should have a little clicker here somewhere. If it's not here already, we're going to figure it out real quick. But aha, look at that. It's a beautiful thing. I started in business real young. I started in business at 14 years of age. At 14 years of age, I was knocking on the doors of my neighbors, asking them quite politely whether they would like to have their cars washed. Some said yes, a few said no. Most just asked me how much money I would charge, which I very quickly realized meant they were remarkably interested, providing my prices were somewhere near reasonable. Now, I did okay with that little car cleaning business, so much so that by the age of 15, I wasn't going to school anywhere near as often as I should be. And I remember getting invited in by my school teachers to ask me some questions about my attendance. And I remember sat in that conversation with my school teacher who said, hey, Phil, why don't you come to class? I said, sir, do you mind me asking you a question? He said, sure. I said, sir, how much money are you making? See, school teacher refused to tell me at the time. But at 15 years of age, my little car cleaning business was delivering me over £3,500 a month, about $7,000 a month at the time. It's a reasonable sum of money for a 15-year-old kid. So the reason I didn't go to class is because I had customers that needed servicing, I had staff that needed direction, there was things that needed to be done. Now what I managed to then go on to be able to do is I built my studies part-time around my businesses. At the age of 18, was faced with the touch of a dilemma. I had an offer on the table for one of the most prestigious universities in my country. Chance to be able to get one of those pieces of paper, make mum and dad feel really proud about their parenting skills. And I decided I wanted to run things in a slightly different direction. Remember conversations with my parents, remember saying to them, well, how would you feel if I didn't go to university and I went and got my education in the workplace? What if I went and got a big job that you'd need to get a good degree for? What if I could go get that done at the age of 18? They said that would be really hard to do. 3 weeks later, I proved them wrong. At the age of 18, I became the youngest ever sales manager for a department store business in the UK called Debenhams. And there's a beautiful thing about being in a senior leadership position at the age of 18. Because at 18 years old, you do not know what you do not know. When it comes to being successful, I really quickly learned that success leaves clues. I learned that there are people ahead of me in a race that if I ask them how to do it, they tell me. I learned that within many organizations, there are playbooks, there are rule books, there are sequences and systems that can help you get stuff done. And I just followed all that stuff. I got great results through all of the stores that we went through there, and bosses were mesmerized. They'd say, Phil, how do you do it? I was puzzled by that question for a while, and then finally I found an answer. They asked me how I did it. They're looking for something profound. And I told them, well, I think what I do is I do the basics to a high standard consistently. They said, is there much else? I said, no, not really. Then what happened is I hit one of those glass ceilings. Anybody been in a corporate role where you hit a glass ceiling? Where the only way you can get the next job is if the person above you leaves or dies? This guy was in great shape. Realizing it was time for a change, I got an inbound phone call from a guy called Lord Graham Kirkham. Lord Graham Kirkham owned the largest independent furniture retail business in the UK. He wanted me to help turn around broken stores. Stores that used to turn over 12 million, that dropped back to 7. I had to get them back to heyday figures. I had to get them back there fast. 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, turnaround. And guess what? Everywhere we went, we did it. Back to heyday numbers and some. Bosses would say to me, Phil, how do you do it? I said, well, it's pretty simple, really. We do the basics to a high standard consistently. They said, is there anything else? I said, well, maybe a few sprinkles of magic. They said, what's all that stuff? Can you write it down? And it was at that point I caught my bug for training. I very quickly realized I got far more personal satisfaction seeing huge success through other people than I could just trying to achieve things for myself. And one of the basics that we need to get really good at consistently is the quality of the conversations we have when we show up towards the people that matter. At Summit, do any of you remember me throwing this triangle up on screen? Sharing with you 3 critical ingredients as how to impact any conversation. Many people in the room are thinking about, how can I use this to win the listing? I want to elevate our consciousness a touch more and say, actually, how can you use this to navigate any critical conversation in life? Whether this is a challenge you're having with a spouse, whether this is a challenge you're having with your kids, whether this is a challenge you're having with a team leader, whether it's a challenge you're having with your client base, your community, your marketplace, regardless of where it is, this framework will serve you. See, to win in conversation, we just need these 3 ingredients. That's it, right? 1 of curiosity, 2 of empathy, 3 of courage. You've heard those words before, but why does it matter? The reason that curiosity is a superpower is because it earns you something that many of you are missing right now. Context. You are missing context from the moments you are trying to influence. You don't know enough in order to be able to lead because you don't have enough of the data. Curiosity is a superpower because it can help you find the truth. I'll give you an example of where you have failed to use curiosity. Show of hands in this room who is a parent, has children, or has been a kid. Cool. Ever found yourself in a moment where a kid needed help with something? They were proclaiming a problem in their life and you jumped straight to solution mode? Let me tell you what you needed to do, and you were giving advice for the completely wrong problem? It wasn't bad advice. It was missing context. You want to win in this current market in all of the moments that you're stepping into? Increase the curiosity to increase the context and raise your level of emotional intelligence to the moment, and what you will do is you will show up for the moment better because you'll better understand the moment. The one thing I have learned, though, the difference between those that do good and those that really crush it, really crush it, is the ones that really crush it, they do know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make it count. They know the power of word choices. They practice their word choices. They reverse engineer their word choices. They refine their word choices. They get better at their word choices day in, day out. There is a thing for all of you in this room that is holding you back. Probably the biggest self-sabotaging thing towards your professional career at this point in time is this: your experience. Why is your experience holding you back? It's because you can figure yourself out of a whole host of holes based on that experience. You can show up a fraction as good as you know you can be and still get by just fine most days. You can wing it, you can overcome some of the obstacles that get thrown at you, but professionals never do that. Professionals do get brilliant at the basics. Professionals do the work to say that they're always in rookie mode, they're always learning, they're always looking to be able to grow. Give yourself the gift at this conference to live the rest of it out in rookie mode. Throw the I know mindset out the door until you get back to the office and give yourself the gift of rookie mode. Because you learned quickest when you lived in rookie mode. I think we can all invite ourselves to step there a little. I'll give you one example in my world. It might help you a little understand about what I mean by a critical conversation in your personal life. I travel a lot with the work that I do. I'm often away from home, coming back home. I'm away from home, I'm coming back from home. You know a critical conversation in my life that I'm hyper-focused on right now? What are the first words that leave my mouth when I re-enter the home from a trip? What are the first words that leave my mouth when I re-enter the home from a trip? Because I tell you what, it's pretty darn easy to fuck that up. Difference to your weekend, difference to your afternoon, difference to your evening, difference to your life, just from messing up that first 15 seconds. If I get that 15 seconds right, good weekend, good times. Get that 15 seconds wrong, uphill struggle for the rest of the days. You see how much of an impact a micro moment can have if you give it enough focus. That's what I'm inviting you to do. It's not just the worst time to think about the thing that you're going to say is in the moment you're saying it. It's choose your critical conversations. Always have 3 you're working on. 1 as a leader, 1 that has commercial aspects, 1 in your personal life. Once you've crushed them, swap the 3. Once you've crushed them, swap the 3. But that's what you're working on. Just working on that right now. How many of you have committed time to your schedule to meet to somebody, to speak with somebody, to be at something, and haven't given anywhere near enough thought to what you could have achieved in that conversation until you found yourself in that conversation? Here's what pros do, is they get really good at saying, who am I speaking to later today? They then get really good at saying, who am I speaking with later this week? They then get really good at saying, what have I got going on for the rest of the month? In the hustle we're in right now, it's easy to be head down and running, right? Head down and running. I'm saying raise the gaze. Look a little further out into the distance and see what you already have committed to. And how can you get ready for the moment ahead of time? What difference would it make if you did a bit of homework about every listing appointment you were going on prior to the listing appointment? You found them on social. You got a couple of mutual acquaintances. You did a 30 seconds Google research. What difference would it make to your success or failure or of conversion in that moment? What difference would it make if you knew you were meeting somebody in your team to sit down for a performance review, that you just took a bit of time to be able to check out what they've been sharing in their personal lives, that you gave some thought to how you might start that conversation, how might you make the most of that 45 minutes? It matters. I mentioned that curiosity is the fuel to great conversations and that curiosity is a superpower. Why do I say that curiosity is a superpower? Ask yourself this: has there ever been a conversation that's been derailed in your world because you wasn't curious for long enough? We all have those examples, right? That if we just stayed curious for a little longer, we'd have got a bit more context. Our job as leaders is to create and close curiosity gaps. Is to create and close curiosity gaps. What is a curiosity gap? I'll try and help you understand. Have you ever found yourself on social media, like on Facebook, where some weird video found itself into your feed? It was like somebody doing an art project or somebody doing something in the street, and there's like a tag and it says watch to the end, and you find yourself 11 seconds into the video of watching something, and 23 seconds into the video of watching it, and 1 minute and 46 seconds into the video of watching something, and you're wondering what's going to happen, and you're 5 minutes and 11 seconds into the video wondering what's going to happen, and then your coffee's gone cold, and you're late for your appointment, but you still have to wait towards the end, and then nothing really happens. Those people are the masters of creating curiosity gaps. See, when you can create tension in a conversation that is based on what's going to happen, you cannot help but follow it through to the end. Anybody here ever played the game of poker? In the game of poker, there's a phrase that's being called pot committed, right? You decided to be able to see what came out from the cards. You've got some money in the middle. I guess, I should go the distance. These are the kind of conversations we need to be having with buyers and sellers, right? Can we get them to the turn? Can we get them to stay in the conversation for long enough to be able to realize that they should sell or that they should buy? Can we create a big enough curiosity gap to make them want to reply to our emails? Can we create a big enough curiosity gap in our marketing to make them lean in and say, tell me some more about that? See, in the past market that we were in, people wanted certainty. They wanted you to tell them what to do. You wanted them to make it okay for them to pay over ask. They wanted you to make it okay to say you've got to act now and you've got to be maverick and you've got to be able to do these things. Now, the game's the other way around. We had to push people to win in the old market. In this market, you've got to pull people to have them feel confident, to have them feel safe. A curiosity gap will help pull people in. When you pull them in, you've then got to be able to close those curiosity gaps. Here's another sequence of words that's really helpful in closing curiosity gaps. So question with the words, when was the last time? You want to hyper-focus somebody? When was the last time is a powerful preface to get there. I'm going to invite you to do this in your own mind. Just for a second, I'm going to ask you a series of 3 questions. And I want you to think of the answers. You don't need to speak on the answer. I want you to think on it. I want you to think in 4K, full color. The question I'm going to ask you, prefaced with the words, when was the last time, is the question, when was the last time you felt proud? I'm then going to stack the question. How often do you experience that feeling? I'm then going to stack it further. For how long would you like to experience that feeling in the future? I didn't tell you anything. You just all went to all kinds of crazy places. This is what great leaders do. They help people see things for themselves. Curiosity is a superpower when you're brave enough to stay in it longer than most people are comfortable. When you're brave enough to allow a situation to breathe. Tom and I were having a conversation about wine last night. Sometimes a good wine needs time to breathe. Sometimes a tough conversation needs time to breathe. As leaders, sometimes we have to create that space for the conversation to breathe. And staying in the curious position for longer helps us find context, and more context, and more context, which sometimes changes your perspective. And I remember an early mentor of my life that taught me a huge amount, a guy by the name of Peter Lee. And Peter Lee, to me, was a fabulous role model. He operated in the training space. I worked with him back in the UK when I worked in the furniture industry. He was the guy that brought Dale Carnegie's work to the UK. And Peter was great because he was a role model to a point that I was a little bit jealous of him. He not only had a very successful career coming from some very humble beginnings, he was living that life where he could kind of do what he wants, when he wants, with who he wants. And I remember going out to go and see him to be able to learn more about his experience. And I remember trying to get to his house, and this was prior to like GPS, and I've got my maps out, and I'm in the middle of the Yorkshire countryside in the UK, and his house is called Two Towers, and I get to the point on the map where like I'm trying to find where the house is, and I don't see a house, and I just see a set of gates, and I see this little plaque that says Two Towers. And I start traveling on the drive, and the drive is like a long drive. It's like a mile-long drive, and I then get there, and I realize why the house is called Two Towers. It's like, boom. And then I'm like, whoa, this is a big deal. And then I see like a garage for like 17 cars with 17 cars in it. And then I see like this other like annex wing over here, and I'm like, one day I want to be able to be a bit more like you. I get a chance to be able to ask some questions of him. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask of him was about where the tipping point was in his world. Because I knew he came from some very humble beginnings. I knew he was a hard-working son of a coal miner, etc. There wasn't a natural career trajectory for him to be where he's at. So I said to him, like, what was the tipping point? And he struggled for a while, and then he got to a point, it was like, well, when I won my first really big client. I said, yeah, but how did you do that? He said, well, I think I just picked up the phone. I said, it can't have been that easy. Tell me what really happened. He said, well, I decided for some period of time that I wanted to work with this one company. And I found out that the CEO's name was Graham, and I found out that his personal assistant was called Barbara. So one day, I picked up the phone to Barbara, and I said to Barbara, can I speak to Graham? And she said, he's not available right now. I said, and then what? He said, well, then I call back. I said, when? He said, every Thursday for a period of about 2.5 years. I said, and then what happened? He said, well, then Barbara went off on maternity leave. And I got to speak to all kinds of different people that were covering from different departments or temporary staff. It was really kind of interesting. I said, and then what happened? He said, well, then Barbara came back. I got to find out all about a new baby. It was really quite interesting. We were kind of best of chums. I said, and then what? He said, it was maybe 6-7 weeks after that. I was calling for our regular afternoon catch-up. We're about 17, 18 minutes into the conversation. I was about to hang up as usual, and she said, do you want to speak to Graham? He said, yeah, sure. The phone went quiet for a sustained period of time. The phone was then answered by a broad Yorkshire accent that said, my God, you're a persistent bugger. To which Peter responded like a coiled spring with, I bet you wish all your salespeople were as persistent as me. That was the point where Peter won the opportunity that gave him the appointment to be able to go on to be able to close a piece of business, that then went on to be able to close a monstrous amount of business, that then served him with a relationship for over 25 years, that also gave him the credibility to win multiple other relationships of the same kind of size because he delivered for those scenarios. So I said to Peter at the end of all of this, because I wanted to include his story in my very first book, I said to Peter, was it worth it? What do you think he said? And all the effort, all the energy, was it worth it? Yeah. For sure it was worth it, you idiot. So ladies and gents, I've been Phil Jones. It's been a privilege to be able to play here with you today. I'm around for the rest of the event. I'm here to serve. Thank you, thank you, thank you.